Okay, let's dive into a psychological concept that might just explain some of the most confusing and, frankly, destructive people you'll ever meet. It's a way to understand those who seem to be playing by a totally different set of rules.
We're all taught to be honest, to be kind, to play fair, but deep down, we know that's not the whole story, right? Some people seem to be playing an entirely different game, a game where our good intentions are just seen as weaknesses they can exploit.
Think about it. Maybe it was that colleague who was so charismatic but somehow always took credit for your work. Or that partner who swept you off your feet only to completely drain you, emotionally and financially. Or even that friend who acted like they adored you, but you later found out they were tearing you down behind your back. If any of that sounds familiar, it's because there's usually a pattern at play.
And this isn't just, random bad behavior. There's actually a psychological framework for it. It's a concept that was first really nailed down by researchers Delroy Paulus and Kevin Williams way back in 2002.
Now, it's really important to get this straight. This isn't a formal clinical diagnosis you'd find in a doctor's office. Think of it more like a constellation of traits that researchers use to understand manipulative and antisocial behavior in everyday people. It's a spectrum. And look, we all have some of these traits to a degree, but for some people, they are dangerously cranked up to 11.
So first up in the trio is narcissism. And this goes way, way beyond simple selfishness. We're talking about a personality that's completely built around a sense of superiority and just deep self-absorption. In their world, they are the main character, and everyone else, we're all just part of the audience.
Next, we have Machiavellianism. And yeah, it's named after that guy, Niccolo Machiavelli, who basically wrote the book on manipulation. This trait is all about a strategic, cynical approach to life. People aren't seen as people. They're seen as pawns on a chessboard, instruments to get what you want. Things like morality, loyalty, honesty, all of that is flexible, totally disposable if it serves their goals.
And the third one is psychopathy. Now, when we hear that word, our minds immediately jump to horror movies and axe murderers, but that's not what we're talking about here. Subclinical psychopathy describes people in our ordinary lives, our coworkers, our neighbors, who just have a severely dampened sense of empathy and remorse. They can lie, they can cheat, they can hurt people, all without that little pang of guilt that most of us would feel. And here's the thing that's truly startling. Look at how common this is. This is not some rare fringe phenomenon. Research from experts like Scott Barry Kaufman suggests that about 1 in every 14 people scores high on these traits. Just think about that. That means you have almost certainly worked with one, dated one, or have one in your social circle right now. So, if they're that common, how in the world do you spot them? Well, it's incredibly tricky, because if there's one thing these individuals are, it's masters of disguise. They are fantastic liars, experts at telling you exactly what you want to hear. They present this perfectly crafted public image, the mask. On the surface, they seem charming, super confident, and so intensely interested in you. But underneath, the reality is a cold machine of self-interest. That charm, it's a tool for manipulation. That confidence, it's often masking a deep insecurity. And their interest in you, it only lasts as long as you're giving them the attention and admiration they crave.
So what are the actual red flags? Well, psychologists have a little checklist they call the Dirty Dozen to spot these traits. Think about the people in your life. Does someone consistently manipulate others? Lie without even blinking? Do they seem totally unbothered by hurting people's feelings? Or act like the rules just don't apply to them? These are huge warning signs.
One source I read put it perfectly. They are playing a completely different game than you are. They see something like loyalty not as a virtue, but as a temporary contract that lasts only as long as your interests line up with theirs. The second that changes, that contract is terminated, and to them, you are totally disposable. Okay, so you know what to look for, but just knowing isn't enough, is it? The most important question is, what can you actually do to protect yourself when you realize you're dealing with someone who operates this way? Here is a practical, 4-step strategy you can use. First, stop giving them ammunition. Your personal stories, your vulnerabilities, that's just data they can weaponize later. Second, try the gray rock method. Basically, become boring. Give short, uninteresting, non-emotional answers. They feed on drama and reactions, so you have to starve them of that. Third, your boundaries have to be rock solid and non-negotiable. And finally, especially at work, document everything, create a paper trail. And you need to be prepared for this very specific tactic if you ever confront them. It's an acronym, DARVO.
First, they will deny they did anything wrong. Then they will attack your credibility, your character, even your sanity. And finally, they will reverse the roles of victim and offender, flipping the script so it looks like they're the one being attacked and you're the real aggressor. It is an incredibly powerful and disorienting manipulation tactic.
Now, it's really easy to get cynical after hearing all of this, I know. But it's not all darkness. Psychology also gives us a hopeful, really important counterpoint to all these destructive traits. Proposed much more recently, the light triad describes a more pro-social, caring, and humanistic way of being in the world. It's basically the yin to the dark triad's yang.
And this comparison just lays it all out so clearly. Instead of the narcissist's obsession with themselves, you have humanism, the idea that every single person has inherent worth. Instead of Machiavellianism's view of people as tools, you have a belief in treating people with respect as individuals, not as pawns. And instead of psychopathy's cold, cynical worldview, you have a fundamental faith in humanity.
So, at the end of the day, both of these human potentials, the dark and the light, they exist all around us. Some people are driven to exploit and control, while others are driven to care and connect. Just recognizing that both exist is the first real step toward navigating the world a little more wisely.
And that leaves us with this final thought. Knowing that both manipulators and nurturers are out there, the question isn't just about how to avoid the wolves. It's about the choices we all make. Who do we choose to be? And maybe more importantly, whose behavior do we reward, enable, and empower in our workplaces, in our friendships, and in our society? The answer to that is what's going to shape the world we all have to live in.